Good morning, brothers and sisters. I apologize for the short lesson yesterday. It was totally unexpected. Today is Wednesday, April the 26th, and it is approximately 11:01. We're going to start off with Psalms 53. It has 6 verses, predominantly black, and one verse of green for love, and one verse of purple for the Trinity, which is verse 2. Let's begin. 53, the psalmist's description of the corrupt. 53 is the psalmist's description of the corrupt. It is a psalm written by King David. Let's begin. Verse 1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquities. There is none that does as good. None. 2. Purple for the Trinity. God looketh down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. God looketh down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. 3. Every one of them is gone back. They are all together become filthy. There is none that does good, no, not one. 4. Have the workers of iniquities no knowledge? Who eat up my people as they eat bread. They have not called upon God. 5. There were they in great fear where no fear was, for God has scattered the bones of him that encampeth against thee. Thou hast put them to shame, because God has despised them. 6, the last verse is green. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. That's with an exclamation mark. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice and Israel shall be glad. Let's go directly into our reading that we were supposed to do yesterday. It is still on the subject of hanging, another form of capital punishment. The first one was burning. That is a form of capital punishment. And today we're going to read a second story, this time involving David and his son Absalom. The day before yesterday we read about Tamara and her father-in-law. So in 2 Samuel chapter 18, it is a somewhat long chapter. It has 33 verses. It talks about Joab slays Absalom, whose hair is caught in a tree, and it also talks about David moans for his son. I did yesterday try to go over just a few of the characters of the people that we'll be reading about today. And I gave you a few extra words, like Haran. Haran is a group of females associated with one man. So we use Esther as the Haran, and the one man that she was associated with, King Ahasuerus. Okay, and we also spoke about Joab. Joab means Jehovah is father, and we will read about him today. He was the son of Zeruiah, David's half-sister. He led David's army to victory over Ishbosheth. He also was, he assassinates Abner deceitfully. Absalom, another character in this story, his name means father of peace, though he does not live up to that name. And he is the son of David. He is handsome. He that is written in 2 Samuel 14. He slays Ammon for raping his sister Tamara, and he conspires against King David, his father. Okay, so let's begin. Verse 1 says, "And David numbered the people that were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them." Verse 2, "And David set forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third part under the hand of Ittiah, the Gat, the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you myself also." So he accompanied this group to wherever their destination was, or whoever their target was. The king did not stay home this time. He did go with his troops. 3-5 is green for love. But the people answered, "Thou shalt not go forth, for if we flee away, they will not care for us. Neither if half of us die, will they care for us. But now thou art worth 10,000 of us. Therefore now it is better that thou succors us out of the city." So I'm going to read that from here, starting from the first verse. It says, "David mutters the men who were with him, and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. 2. David sent the troops out, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittiah the Gittite. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march with you." As I say, he accompanied this particular group. 3. But the men said, "You must not go out. If we are forced to flee, they won't care about us. But even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It will be better now for you to give us support from the city." Okay. Verse 4, it says here, "And the king said unto them, What seemeth you best I will do? And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands." I will read it from here also. "The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you." So the king stood beside the gate, while all the men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. 5. "And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittiah, saying, Deal gently for my sake with the young men, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom." All right, let's read it from here. It says, "The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittiah, Be gentle with the young man, Absalom, for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanding officers." So he was concerned about the young man as well as being concerned about his son. 6. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim. 7. Where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. Reading it from here. The army marched, verse 6 of 2 Samuel 18. For those of you that are just joining us, we are in 2 Samuel 18, verse 6. I'm reading it both from the old version as well as the international version so that you can get a full understanding of what is going on in this particular story. Verse 6, "The army marched into the field to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. 7. There the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the casualties that day was great, 20,000 men. 8. And ladies and gentlemen, from verse 6 to verse 13 is silver. This is all history, okay? 8. For the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more men, more people that day than the sword devoured. So we'll read it from here. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. 9. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode up upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick roots of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. So as he was riding under this oak tree, he got caught up by his hair, because he had beautiful long hair, and the mule, the beast that was under him, kept on going. So we're going to read it from here so that you do understand that that is exactly what happened. Now Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's head got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in midair while the mule he was riding kept on moving. That's exactly what I said. Okay, 10. And a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hung in an oak. 11. And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him, and why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shingles of silver and a girdle. Now the Joab said to him, Why didn't you kill him there while he was hanging? I would have given you or rewarded you with 10 shingles of silver and a girdle. We'll read it from here, because that's exactly what it says. When one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. 11. Joab said to the man who had told him this, What? That's an exclamation mark. You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shingles of silver and a warrior's belt. Like I told you, a girdle is a belt worn by priests, worn by warriors, and worn by our Lord Jesus Christ in the vision that Paul had. The Lord had on a special girdle. Okay. 10. We're going to 12. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 100 shingles of silver in my hand, yet would I not put forth my hand against the king's son. This was a good man. This was a good man. That's the difference between good and evil. We will find this out in this story. Pay attention. Better than paying attention, grab your Bible and read along with me. I will begin from 12. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shingles, he was only offering 10, 1,000 shingles of silver in my hand, yet would I not put forth my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touches the young man Absalom. He had warned them about looking after Absalom. And when Absalom got caught in that tree, one man saw it, told Joab, and Joab said, Why have you not killed the boy? Anyway, the man was a righteous man, and a righteous man would not do that which is evil. Okay? I will read it from here again. 11. Joab said to the man who had told him this, "What? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shingles of silver and a warrior's belt." Now, this is what the good man says. Verse 12. But the man replied, "Even if 1,000 shingles was weighed out into my hands, I would not lift my hand against the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai protect the young man Absalom for my sake." So he reminded Joab the words of the king, and this is another reason why he would not do no harm to the king's son. Okay, 13. Otherwise, I should have warped falsehood against my own life, for there is no matter hid from the king, and thou thyself would have had set thyself against me. 13. And it says here, in 13, and if I have put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me if he had done such a thing. Okay? Therefore, that man was someone the king could trust. Not everyone among your people is trustworthy. I'll repeat that. Not everyone among your family is trustworthy. Not everyone among your associates is trustworthy. Not everyone on the pulpit is trustworthy. Okay, moving right along. 16. 14. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak tree. So while Absalom hung on that tree, Joab took 3 darts and shot and threw the darts at him. We'll read this from here. Joab said, I'm not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins, Javelins, are small miniature swords. Okay, they're very, very tiny. They're made for the hand. They're like a miniature size sword is big like this, and a javelin is small. It's very small like this. Okay, so 14, he said, I am not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. Okay, so he killed the king's son. Now, not everything Joab does is bad. Not everything, okay? But this particular thing he did was bad. Okay, so we're going into 15. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. Oh my God. 15. And 10 of the Joab's army bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. So after the javelins hit him, 3 of them, then 10 more of Joab's associates came and finished Absalom off. 16. 14 and 15 is black for sin. When Joab says, I will not tarry thus with thee, he took the 3 darts in his hand and thrusted them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the tree. That is black. And 10 men that bare Joab's armor compassed about, they surrounded him and smote Absalom and slew him. That is also black for sin. Okay, then we're going back into silver. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. 17. And they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stone upon him, and all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Oh my God. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel from Joab's halt them, for Joab halted them. 17. They took Absalom, threw him into a big pitch in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their houses. 18. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no sons to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it was called unto this day Absalom's place. And we'll read it from here. They took 18. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no sons to carry on the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom Monument to this day. Okay, 19. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zodok, let me now run and bear the king's tidings, how that the Lord has avenged him of his enemies. Okay, 20. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, for thou shalt bear tidings another day, but this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. So someone wanted to give the news to the king, but Joab stopped him from giving the king any news this day, he says. And I will read it from here. It says 19, and Ahimaaz, son of Zodok, said, Let me run and take the news of the king to the king, that the Lord has delivered him from the hand of his enemy. 20, you are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead. All right, let's move on. 21. Then said Joab to Cushi, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushi bowed himself unto Joab and ran. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zodok, yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushi. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready? Okay, we'll read this from here. Then Joab said to a Cushite, Go tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. 22. Ahimaaz, son of Zodok, again said to Joab, Come what may, please let me run behind the Cushite. But Joab replied, My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward. Let's continue. 23. But howsoever, say he, 24. And David sat between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man running along. So David was in a particular spot, and he saw the young Cushite running towards him. 25. And the watchman cried and told the king, and the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came a space and drew near. 26. And the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called unto the porter and said, Behold, another man running along. And the king said, He also brings tidings. 27. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zodok. So he recognized the man as Ahimaaz that was running towards the king. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. So when he heard that it was Ahimaaz, the king knew this particular person, and he knew him to be a good man. So he assumed that this good man had good news for him. Let me start from here. And let me start from 23. He said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked out, he saw a man running along. 25. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the man came closer and closer. 26. The watchman saw another man running, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man running along." This is with an exclamation mark. The king said, "He must be bringing good news too." So he saw two men. Now the watchman is at the gate of the city, or at the gate of the city there was always a porch-like section above the gate where the Levites, there were normally Levites, they were called porters, and they would be the one who would see all those that was coming to the city, and that would inform the king who was coming his way, whether it was a foul or a friend. Okay. So the king said in 26, verse 26, he must be bringing good news too, because he saw two men running. Okay. 27 over here. And the watchman said, "Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zodek." So he said he thinks the one that was running the fastest was Ahimaaz, and he did recognize him, and he was right. And the king said, "He is a good man and brings forth good tidings." Okay, so the watchman said, "It seems to me the first one runs like Ahimaaz, the son of Zodek, and he's a good man." The king said, "He comes with good tidings." All right. So 28, and Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, "All is well." And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king and said, "Blessed be the Lord thy God, which has delivered up the men that lifted up their hands against my lord the king." Okay. And 29 says, and the king said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And Ahimaaz answered, "When Joab sent the king's servant and me, thy servant, I saw a great turmoil, but I knew not what it was." He lied. He lied. He lied. Okay. 28. Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up the men who lifted up their hands against my lord the king." 29. The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant with and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." So let's continue. 29. And the king said unto him, "Turn aside and stand here." And he turned aside and stood there. 31 is blue for your salvation. And behold, Cushite came, and the Cushite say, "Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee." So I will read it from here. Then the Cushite arrived. First the king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite who left first, and the Cushite ran first, but Ahimaaz ran past him to get to the king. So finally, the Cushite arrives at the king, and he says, "My lord the king, hear the good tidings. The Lord has delivered you today from all who rose up against you." Okay. The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rose up to harm you be like that young man." Ooh, my lord. And the king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom." This is exclamation now. He is in full blown sorrow. He's in full blown sorrow. Right? How does that feel? If you have children, no matter what they've done, when you hear of their demise, no matter what they've done, you are going to feel the pain of losing your child. Okay. But there is a limit as to how much you should grieve, because this young man had done plenty to his father. But yet his father grieved for him. Despite the fact that this young man had his father running from him, this young man conspired to take his father's kingdom from him. Sometimes we as parents can have misplaced honor. Misplaced. Misplaced. And after a while, God will step in and do what needs to be done. And God stepped in that day on David's behalf. And all the men of David fought hard for him. They fought hard to find the enemies of the king. They fought hard to destroy the enemy of the king. Yes, one of the king's enemies was his very own. If my son or daughter try to kill me, I will not grieve their demise. Misplaced honor. Misplaced. Okay, let's finish it. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son." Okay, here it reads in the 32, and the king said unto Cushai, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And Cushai answered, "The enemy of my lord the king, and all that rose against thee to do thee harm, be as that young man is." And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gates, and wept. And he went, thus he said, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom!" Exclamation marks here also. "Would God I have died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son." Misplaced honor. Okay. So, and the problem was the king, as he got older, he began to become soft, and he did not chastise his children like he should have. Eli, the priest, had the same problem, chastising his sons for taking out of the offering before it was properly prepared. Okay? And the king had that same issue. Whenever we have a problem here on earth chastising our children, the Lord himself will chastise our children. And he is another one who died by hanging, and not only hanging, but also died by the javelin, died by several other 10 men surrounding him and just stabbing him to death. We did not get a chance to read that up to this point that caused Absalom his death. Absalom had done many, many, many evil things to his father, things that he should have been stoned for. But as our king David got older, he became softer, and he wasn't the warrior that he used to be. And for some reason, he had trouble chastising his children. He did not chastise Ammon when Ammon raped his sister. He did not chastise Absalom when Absalom did things. So when we fail to chastise our children, the Lord chastised them. And when he chastised them, it's always more harsh than the way we would have chastised them. So, ladies and gentlemen, the point here is that nobody, nobody gets away with nothing. God sees all things. And whatever you do, if it does not please God, it doesn't matter how many times your parents may turn the cheek and act like they don't see and act like they don't know. The Lord sees and knows. And in time, the Lord will make sure that you suffer for your deeds. So that's what I tell people. Just because you do something to someone and it seems like you've gotten away with it, you haven't gotten away with anything. In God's own time, he will punish us for our deeds. He will remind us of what we've done, and he will surely chastise us for our deeds. So it is better, America, that you take the time to chastise your children, because if you don't, when the Lord chastises them, it's not going to be pretty. And that is another form of capital punishment, hanging. That is the story for today. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you were able to understand it. I hope most of all that it makes an impact on your life. I hope that if you have little small children, that you take the time to chastise your children. You take the time to nurture your children. You take the time to teach your children the ways of God. So that this way, if you give them that guidance, those spiritual words that you share with your children will serve as guidance for them. It will help them to stay on that narrow path in life. Because once they get on that wide and open road where everything is going on and all kinds of abominable things are going on, don't think that because you are accepting of your child and what they're doing, that God is going to be accepting of your child and what they're doing. Let me tell you something. Every man and woman on this earth is called by God. Every man and woman on this earth, before they exit the womb of their mother's belly, the Lord knows that individual already. Okay, he knows what they will do in their lifetime, and he knows everything about them, including how many hairs on their head, including how many times they will do things in their lives, including what they will do in their whole entire lives. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it is worthwhile to chastise our children, to let them know that there is somebody greater than the president. There is somebody greater than the CIA. There is somebody greater than the priest that you go and listen to every Sunday. His name is God, and he is an all-seeing God. So there is nothing under the sun that he does not see, and there is nothing under the sun that he is not aware of before it even happens. So if you want your children to grow up to be good, righteous men and women, I suggest that you teach them the word of God and keep them safe, because as long as they are in good graces with God, it doesn't matter what's going on around on earth. If they're in good graces with God, he will protect them. He will increase them. He will bless them. He will prosper them. But if they do things that are against the will of God, they are cursing themselves. So you might say, oh, my son has become a daughter, and now I have a daughter. That thing that your son did to become that which he is not is grossly offensive to God, because it is grossly offensive for you to take the most holiest part of that individual and cut it off to make them into something they were not. So although you may find that acceptable, it is not acceptable unto the God we serve. It is an abomination to him, and sooner or later he will punish that individual for that which they have done to offend God. Did you hear me? Whatever you accept, it may not always be good in the sight of God, because what is right in our sight may not always be right in God's sight. So when the Lord chooses to punish us or punish our children, he is doing it for a good reason, because he is a just God. A just God. And everything he do is correct. Okay? Just a reminder. In the meantime, may the peace of God be upon you. May the protection of God surround you. May the will of God come from you. But most importantly, may you teach your children about the awesome God we serve. Because though it may seem like evil is festering in this earth, God can wipe out the evil all at one time if he chooses to. So if I were you, I would teach your children the laws of God and keep them safe for the rest of their days. Thank you for listening to Spiritual Water. My name is Brenda Guerrero. Have a wonderful day.